Hello guys, I am so excited for this video because I get to talk to you guys about fantasy. Fantasy is my favorite genre to read in fiction. I just love the immersive entertainment, the display of imagination. I just love fantasy. So we're gonna talk mostly about the books that I have on my favorite shelf. I've apparently done a decent job acquiring the books that I love once I've read it and found that I love it. So there is one that I will share with you now that I don't own. I read it last year. It is Vivid by Ashley Bustamante. This one I don't own, so I'll just put it in the beginning of this video. I do love this one. It is definitely YA though, so it's definitely got a bit of a younger, a little bit more immature vibe to it, but in terms of the fun color magic that is in this book, it's a lot of fun. There is like a magical school setting, which I know a lot of people love. I don't really have any preference towards the magical school setting, but I like this one. And there's color magic, and there is, you know, are the authorities corrupt or are they on the right path? They're just not doing things the right way. So we're from the perspective of a girl at the school. Yeah, so that one is a lot of fun. And then the rest of them I have on my favorite shelf. So let's dive in. We'll start on this side of the shelf. So we've got Color by J.J. Fisher. This magical system is one of memories. Memories are basically currency in this world. So you need to have what is the term for what she is? Our main character is a memoria? I don't know. She's a mem. I forget what the full term is, but she's called a mem. And she can access these memories and take them from one person, give them to somebody else, or put them into storage or whatever. So she is a mem, and we're thrown into the story where she's an orphan. She's been raised by this man who seemingly has done everything for her benefit, but maybe that's not the case. She meets two other characters in two different settings that show her that maybe her perception of life is not reality. So anyway, yeah, I would highly recommend this one. Obviously, it's on my favorite shelf. There's a wolf character. She's a white wolf, and she doesn't talk, but she can communicate almost telepathically with certain people. So if people like the talking animal trope, it could maybe be associated with this wolf, sort of. So I highly recommend this one. And I will mention that this is written by a Christian author, and she does have Christian allegorical themes within the story. So it's not outright presented in the story, but it is an allegory. Next we have the Song of Shira series. I've read books 1 and 2 twice, and I love them both. So Song of Shira is more of a Scottish medieval kind of fantasy. So this one has all of those old world medieval vibes to it. Our main character is essentially abandoned by his family, and he does not seem to have the gifts that his family have, and so yeah, he's essentially abandoned as a pretty well adult, and another kingdom takes him in, and he learns, I guess, a different perspective. And in this story, it is written by a Christian author, and the Christian themes are a little bit more present because they do have a God in this world that represents our God. So there is more of that Christian presence, or I guess feeling of this in this series, and I just really like this series. I am going to bypass the Bright Empires series by Stephen Lawhead because that one is more in the science fiction realm of things. So I love it, highly recommend it, but I'm just going to bypass it for this video. The next one I definitely need to mention though is the Ravenwood Saga. This series is phenomenal for fantasy lovers. This kind of magic is dream walking, the ability to enter someone else's dreams, and if you're really proficient in your dream walking ability, which not everybody has obviously, if you're really, really good at your gift, then you can actually affect that person in reality, not just in their dreams. So in this series, it starts off with our main girl, Celine. She is part of a very, I guess, famous matriarchy where all of the women pass down the gift of dreamwalking, and her family has used it for ill, where she is being trained to use it for ill, but is questioning maybe there's a better way to be using this gift. And that causes conflict in her kingdom because that's not how they've done things in all of the generations previous. So that's this series. It is written by a Christian author, and there are strong Christian themes throughout this series also. And I absolutely love this series. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. The next book, of course, that I'm going to talk about is Fox by Nadine Brandes. If you've been on this channel for any length of time, you've probably heard me talk about Fox. It was one of the first Christian fiction fantasy that I ever read that had a very strong Christian connection, I guess. This is color magic in this world, and our main character is in a school setting in the outset, and he is wanting to learn color magic, but for whatever reason it's not coming to him like it is his peers. And this kind of color magic, once you've been like bonded to a color, that is your color, and everything in your world that you see that is that color, you can manipulate in some way. So it's a very cool color magic, and it is a historical retelling of real events in history, so of the gunpowder plot. But yeah, so this is kind of a combination of genres, I guess you could say, and it's just so good. I wish this one was, I mean, the Ravenwood Saga, I feel like almost all fantasy, well, the Ravenwood Saga, and I'm going to talk about Bright Empires, and Fox, like I feel like these, and Vivid, these ones that deal with visuals, the magic that deals with like strong visuals, would be amazing for a movie or TV series. But because of their Christian market, it's not likely that they'll get picked up. And if they do get picked up, they probably don't have the great budget for all of the CGI that would be required. But regardless, this is an incredible book. I highly recommend it. Definitely read it. It is, again, YA, so our main character is a younger person, and his peers, not all of them, but he has some younger peers. So think like high school, I guess. Yeah, I think that's kind of his age bracket, like maybe 17 or something like that. Anyway, so yeah, keep that in mind also. Okay, the next one is, I would call, see, I'm a little bit drawing a blank. Correct me in the comments, guys, because I know so many of you have read this one, but let's chime in. What is really the fantasy element of this one again? I feel like it's just that it's a fantasy world. I don't really think there's magic per se, right? Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Am I forgetting something? Anyway, so this is actually a Goose Girl retelling as far as I'm aware, and it is more of a medieval type book set in a fantasy world. So not so much magic as far as I can recall. This is really, really good. I feel like Rebecca Belliston did a really great job with the twists. They're fairly unexpected and really well done, and I just feel like the pacing of the story is like you just keep going. You just keep going. There's really no dead spots in the storytelling. So I really highly recommend this one. Just our main character is an albino princess who has not fully been rejected by her dad, the king, but kind of abandoned in a way. And so there's so many things that happen that like one event leads to the next. So there's like really nothing I can say too much that wouldn't be spoilery, but we'll just say there's an arranged marriage that doesn't end up happening, and then everything kind of blows up in everyone's faces, and she's kind of in a position to try and do some unique maneuvering in order to help the situation out. I know that's such a vague way of telling a story, but yeah, I highly recommend this one. And so many of the other Christian booktubers, once Oshina brought this up into the world, which I think, if I remember correctly, her mom bought it for her, which, way to go, Oshina's mom, because so many people love this book, and with good reason. So check this book out. And I will say again, this is a Christian author, so there's that. Next up, we're going to talk about this Merlin's Blade. What is the trilogy, or the Merlin Spiral trilogy? This is an older book. It is fantasy, and it is a Christian author, and the Christian themes are present in this book also. So this is actually medieval fantasy, which tends to be a common combination with fantasy, is to add the medieval aspect, which, I mean, I'm here for it. I love it. So this is, I guess, the origin, you could say, of Merlin the Wizard in the King Arthur story. So throughout the 3 books, we see Merlin as a child, and we see him grow up and become a mentor for King Arthur in his own way. So that's kind of the flow of this trilogy, and it's really, really great. I had a good time reading this book and this series. And in this one, I guess the fantastical, magical element is that there are evil druids trying to corrupt the kingdoms so that they can take over. And for whatever reason, Merlin is immune to their abilities. So that's kind of the magical part of this story. So yeah, highly recommend this one. Next up, we have the Knights of Erythrae series. So this kind of book, and then the next one I'm going to talk about, they're a little bit trickier to identify as fantasy per se. They are fantasy, but it's almost like, so okay, this author is a Christian man, and this series in particular is his way of exploring what he thinks might be going on in the spirit world in real life, put into a medieval setting. So that's kind of where I place the fantasy element, is because these things that happen in this series aren't reality for us, aren't in a physical reality for us, but he portrays, I don't know, it's kind of a convoluted idea, but if you understand the concept, you'll get it. I don't have the whole series, but in each book we follow a different knight, the Knights of Erythrae, and the knights are knights of the king, and the king represents our god, and we represent the knights, you know, fighting for the king against evil, right? So in each book, our knights come across a different aspect of evil that they have to overcome. in some way, and I really, really like this series. It is also a little bit appropriate. I don't know. I could say some of it is appropriate. Okay, I don't know. Is it YA? You guys chime in the comments below. Is it a little bit more YA? Because I feel like the way it's presented is a little bit more rudimentary, but I feel like the themes are a bit more adult. I don't know. Help me in the comments. How do you describe this? So anyway, I really love this series. If you listen to the audiobooks, which I did, be forewarned, it is a full cast audio with theatrical sounds and music. So it took me a hot minute, maybe a couple of books even, to really wrap my head around this new immersive way of hearing a story told. It's a bit distracting, I will say, but once you can really get into it, then it's good. So like I said, this next one is in the similar vein where I don't know what category to put this in. Please tell me in the comments below, where does this belong? The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is a very famous Christian man, Christian author from history, Christian theologian. So this book is a very short book. It is written epistolary, so that means in letter form. And the letters are from a head demon, or here it says, letters from a senior to a junior devil. So it's senior devil to a junior devil. So essentially a head demon writing letters to his underling that he's training to be an effective demon for Satan. So in these letters, it really explores the ideas of potentially what the missions of demons are in our life, and it doesn't explore how we should respond, but because it lays out the ideas of where they could possibly be coming from, it really puts into perspective, oh, is that happening in my life? Oh, how do I respond to this when this happens? I didn't realize this could be a tactic of the enemy, you know? So it's a very Christian heavy theology book, but because it's written from demons that it's not like demons are real, but it's not, this isn't nonfiction, right? It's still fiction. So it's a very curious kind of book. I don't know what category to put it in, so we're just gonna put it in fantasy for this video. I don't know. Highly recommend it. I do need to reread it again. The next book I'm going to talk to you guys about technically shouldn't be in this video because it's middle grade, but I did kind of briefly touch on a science fiction series, so we're gonna just let this one be in this video, okay? So The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald is my favorite middle grade. Is that true? I think that might be true. Yeah. So, in this story, we have Princess Irene. Princess Irene, her father is the king, and he is very overprotective of her because there are goblins in this world, in this fantasy world. And all the goblins want to do is capture the humans and torture the humans. So he's very protective. He doesn't like for her to go out of the house because he doesn't want anything to happen to her. Through events, it's not going to make sense to you, but she meets an old woman in her own house, and anyway, ends up wandering outside and getting involved with some goblins that she is now in danger of. So, there's very strong allegorical themes in this story as well. It's hard for me, allegories, I enjoy the allegories when they're obvious. When they're not as obvious, I struggle with allegories because I look too deep, because I try to compare the allegorical idea to the real idea, and there's always a little bit of a disconnect, you know, because an allegory is never going to fully encompass the reality. So anyway, I do love this book though. I think the audiobook will make you love it more than if you just read it with your eyes. So definitely read it with your ears and enjoy the ride. The goblins are hilarious. Princess Irene gets into mischief. Her friend Curdie is really sweet, and I obviously highly recommend this one because it's my favorite middle grade. And I mean, what is a fantasy fiction recommendation video without the ultimate? The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, obviously. They go together. They're one story. You have to consume it together. I feel like if you read one without the other, you're missing something. So, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. I feel like this doesn't really need explanation, right? Do you guys know The Hobbit? It's a magical world, a fantasy world, a world with, wow. J.R.R. Tolkien was a believer, and he has such a God-given imagination. Like, I cannot see how this creative world concept, languages, all of it could have come from anyone except for God, because it blows my mind how someone could just pop, this story comes in their head. This story, this world, this, like, there's history here, and we have seen the history through his other books. Middle Earth is such a vast, vast world. It just blows my mind. I love this story so much. I can't even describe it to you guys. I'm speechless. So if you have not read The Hobbit and you enjoy fantasy content, pick it up. Seriously, you won't regret it. The Hobbit is the easier one to digest than The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings was written for an adult audience, and The Hobbit was written for a little bit younger, a little bit easier to digest fantasy than the Lord of the Rings, but they're both epic fantasy, high fantasy stories, so there's nothing light about this fantasy. Anyway, read it. So there we go. I have gushed about my favorite fantasy. I have been wanting to make this video for a while, and then a few months ago somebody reached out to me and was like, what are some of your favorite fiction or fantasy? And I was like, let me tell you. So here's the video for that. I really need to read some more great fantasy, preferably by Christian authors. We need more. And I would put an extra plea out for any authors watching this. We need some Christian fantasy for adult readers. I feel like more often than not, our Christian fantasy is a little bit YA. I would like some more adult fantasy written by Christian authors. Like gritty topics, like difficult concepts, difficult scenes. Like, keep it obviously Christ edifying, but make it realistic in an adult world. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's my little plug at the end here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you in whatever comes next. Bye!